Hello there, this is Gunnar Olenskar, the hottest interim leader of the city of Marquette. I make sure to put the bull in bullshit. Because I got a mechanical bull. It's actually pretty neat. It's got a really hot interior. It's really perfect for picking up trade, if you know what I mean. Anyway, you're listening to Campaign Spotlight.
Hey there, hags and hobgoblins.
In this week's episode, we're chatting with Mike about bringing guest star players into your campaign.
Let's roll initiative.
You appear in a teleportation circle that looks just like the one from the Library of the Cobalt Soul, except you're outdoors, and immediately behind you is an imposing range of mountains, thick and sharp in its crags and seemingly impenetrable. It surrounds you in a crescent shape. At the mouth of the crescent, you see only blasted landscape, but you feel a tremor in the earth. A gargantuan construct appears. A mechanical bull, but not the fun kind you would ride at a bar. It's a battle mech with obvious destructive capability. Hayate, you recognize this as a perversion of some technology you pioneered during the war. You thought the blueprints had been destroyed, but this looks even more destructive than anything you've previously encountered. It blocks your egress, towering above you menacingly and glowing from its eyes. Abruptly, the head of the bull splits open to reveal an embedded cockpit, where you see the character who will be played by our fabulous guest star for next week.
That is a hell of a way to end an episode. Mike, welcome to Campaign Spotlight.
Thank you so much for having me, Jake. I'm excited to be here.
I am really revved up after that intro. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Mike. I'm a high school teacher in Los Angeles and a former improv nerd and a huge D&D player as of the last. I guess I haven't been playing that long relative to most people, but I started in 2018 or so, and
I think that's actually a little bit longer than a lot of our guests. I think we've talked about this on the show a bit, but a lot of people got really into it during lockdown when kind of the rest of their social life evaporated, and it was nice to have something to do on Zoom.
Exactly. So I had played in person. I had that rite of passage. But then during lockdown, it accelerated and I was in multiple campaigns, including with like old high school improv friends, doing different setups. I've done like 5e campaigns. I did some one-shots with what's the Cthulhu, Call of Cthulhu or...
Yeah,
that one. I did an Avatar: The Last Airbender campaign, also on Zoom.
What system was that in?
It has its own system. It's similar to Powered by the Apocalypse. It's based on the D6s.
Oh, cool. Okay.
But it's very cool. And I did that with also some college improv friends, one of whose bachelor parties I'm going to Friday morning.
Oh my gosh. Well, safe travels for that.
Thank you.
I'm sad we'll miss each other in LA. I guess having those improv chops, I'd imagine, as someone who knows nothing about improv, I would imagine that helps somewhat in tabletop role-playing games.
Absolutely. I loved being a player and thought that I would always only be a player because it was very natural to me. I improvised in high school and college. I used to take classes and perform. I had a running show in LA.
Oh, wow.
And I had a sketch show and at Second City for a while. I had an improv team for a couple of years at the IO West. Both of those theaters have closed down because of the pandemic, sadly. But yeah, it was like very natural to me to be a player. And I was kind of not even interested in being a DM, but I had some friends who like really pushed me to try it, and I did.
Did you perceive of DMing as having like less of an improv attribute to it?
No, and that is where I began my DMing. My foothold was like, all right, I know I can be everybody's scene partner. Mm-hmm. That's like my strength. I know I can do characters, I can do voices, I can play a game with somebody and go back and forth.
Right.
It was more just that I knew how much work went into the preparation, and I was unsure if I could like be responsible for that, or I didn't want to feel responsible for it.
Right, because and once you commit to DMing, you are committing to just doing all that work every couple weeks for the rest of your life.
Right. And so, I love being a player still. I'm still in a campaign with some players I know you know. Marquise and Holly, and you had Sam on your podcast. I listened to that.
Yes! Oh gosh, the sets Sam makes are absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I've got some of our little maquettes here that they made as well. Yeah, so Sam, we started playing together, and Sam always wanted to be a DM, and my friend Andrew from college said, you should probably try playing at all first before you DM.
Yeah?
So Andrew started us at like level 1, and it was like we were just, we were doing improv scenes, and Andrew was the voice of like, okay, like there's a story hook. Can you go find the fucking goblin thing? And
Sure. But ultimately, when you were at level 1, like I feel like with games like D&D or Pathfinder that have this real power creep to them, at level 1, you pretty much just are doing improv because you can't really affect the world around you that much except by talking things through. If you're like level 17, it's like, cool, here's my action economy. Here's how I'm like wreaking violence on the world around me and changing things. And I don't even need to talk in character anymore. I can just describe the actions that are happening. But at level 1, you're in that tavern and you're trying to chat up that mysterious stranger. And it's freeform improv pretty much.
And it was great. I mean, Sam and I did improv together in high school in 2002. So, we go way back. And then after we played and we went into lockdown, our friend Ryan, who also improvised with us all the way in Massachusetts, by the way, he began an online campaign that we played in. And that's where I first encountered guest stars, guest performers. And
I love guest stars. It makes it sound like a TV episode in a very fun way.
It is. It's like having Leonardo DiCaprio on Growing Pains or something.
That is definitely the guest star, not the guest star I would have thought of, but yeah, no, absolutely that.
Sure. So I learned from Ryan. Ryan's my DM like grandparent, and Sam then was my DM like parent. And a mutual friend of, I'm sure you've met Luis and Keith.
Yes, this is we're definitely naming a lot of people right now, but yes, I've met them.
I'm sorry, the names are probably not great for recording, but Luis really encouraged me. He was like, I want to play in D&D, and you have to DM it, and I was like, okay. I mean, I refused the crown a couple of times, but then I.
But that's like part of the epic hero's journey, right? You had to go through the refusal of the call before you set out on your quest.
Right.
So it actually works really well. I think what step is this? Is this where you're being like tempted by evil or something like that?
Yeah. I haven't read Campbell in a little while, but I'm somewhere in my, I haven't reached the apotheosis yet, I think.
After you get to the apotheosis, we'll have you back on the show and we can hear how it went.
Fantastic.
And so I guess when you were in these Zoom games and you were encountering guest stars for the first time, what appealed to you about the concept?
So I originally I was very new, so I was very different. And when Ryan said that something was going to happen, I didn't know the game well enough to ever be like, wait, why, or whatever.
Yeah.
I was not a rules lawyer. I didn't know the rules. I was still figuring it out. Whereas now I'll be a little bit more like, wait, why do I have to get off my mount if my mount has a climbing speed too? Like, whatever.
Oh, absolutely.
And Ryan's friend from Australia joined in, and I thought it was just for fun, but I realized after we did the encounter that person had been brought in to kind of shepherd us toward a story hook. He was a little bit of a guide and also a little bit of I think he betrayed us at one point and then slipped out. And so it was like a Gollum figure, very necessary for getting to where we were going, but also turned on us.
Okay, and so it wasn't just this is someone coming in for the steering the story. They were also playing a character along the way.
They played a full character. They played a bard who made a lot of modern song references kind of thing, which I had never seen then. I now know that's like a whole archetype of characters that people play.
Yup.
But yeah, it was a friend of Ryan's from theater school or
got it.
Directing school, or I forget exactly where. And yeah, I noticed like this is fun to play off of someone. I felt especially engaged as a player with, like there's someone else here. I want to make sure I do things that are very my character so that I can communicate to them like this is what I'm like. And it provided a chance first of all, it was fun and it brought panache. And then also it provided an occasion for me as an actor, not to sound like pretentious, but I was like, this person doesn't know who Agram is. So I got to make sure that I kind of not unsubtly just like dump backstory, but really do things that showcase his personality.
Right. And give them a sense of who they're in the scene with.
Yeah. So that was cool. And it was something that I figured was just normally a part of campaigns.
Valid. And I think that in a lot of actual plays, like, because I think a lot of people, their first exposure to this kind of campaign is like actual plays where guest stars do happen quite a lot. And so I think it's kind of natural to think that like, hey, that's something that every table does. But I don't think anyone we've talked to so far has ever had a guest star.
That's cool. I felt so special when you said that it was unique because I thought it was something that was not unique. And particularly because a friend of mine, Zach, who played with me in my very first campaign, he has his own campaign with players who are, really great, but who are apparently struggling to pick up a couple of story hooks. And he did the same thing. He didn't tell me ahead of time the kind of things that I have told my players ahead of time.
Right.
But he just kind of brought me in because he was like, I know this guy is going to pick up what I'm putting down and not be like, no, I want to go back to the ship and argue again about whether or not I can bring my donkey.
You know what? Sometimes when players are being like that, and this is maybe more advice for the listeners, you need to kill the donkey. Like, that donkey has 4 hit points. Just rip the Band-Aid off. It's going to be like tense for 10 seconds, and then the rest of the campaign will run more smoothly.
That is a good idea. I will keep that in mind because there is a donkey in my campaign named Don Quixote.
I just took psychic damage. Oh my goodness.
I know. But if anyone ever gets too chippy with me, I'll make sure.
Yeah. So for me, my threshold is like the moment you're using the animal for anything mechanical, it's rolling all the same saving throws, it's taking all the falling damage, it can die. Because like if you just have like a pet who's there for like cosmetic reasons, obviously I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm sorry, your pet is going to have to see if it can breathe underwater. No, it's just kind of hanging out. But if that donkey is conferring, if Don Quixote is is conveying a mechanical advantage, it's totally fine to kill it on like no notice.
Yeah, so I was brought in because my friend had players who were like that, and they were having fun. Like, they really were. But I think the DM was like, I think it was I don't remember what it's called, but it's like the Drakehorn storyline with, I don't know. I don't remember if you're trying to prevent the blowing of the Drakehorn or if you're trying to blow the Drakehorn or what, but it was that. And also there were only 3 people in the campaign at that time, and the DM wanted them to fight a dragon. And they were like level 10 or 11 maybe. So it's like they could do it, but they were like, it's probably better to have 4 players instead of 3.
And how did it end up going?
That went great. I made up a character named Brenna Lothwaite, who was like a cross between Cate Blanchett playing Galadriel and Vivian Leigh playing Blanche Dubois.
What references? Absolutely yes.
So she was very like, I know the way. Come, she was like very. I have personally ensured the reincarnation of the Bright Queen twice. Very, I know where to go, and I'm very confident. I took the blows on my face and on my body. You will follow me because I have been there. She's very like that.
That is such a fun guest star character. Oh my goodness. Gosh, yeah, and were they clamoring for you to stick around after that?
Yes, I did stick around for a couple of episodes, which is, I guess, another mechanical thing we can talk about. How I run bringing in guests, because I do have a fairly full table.
Yes.
So I can't exactly just have every person who guests just permanently join.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about your campaign. Can you maybe give the audience some background on what it is you're running?
Sure. So you probably got some of the same backstory with Sam when you had them on, but I was first introduced to playing in the Wildemount setting. I had never even heard of Critical Role. I had never watched any of it. My friend Ryan's campaign that I spoke about was there. And then because Sam had never DM'd, they used the Wildemount setting because it was at least, okay, we know some of the gods, we know some of the basic dynamics of the Kryn and the... So then when I was DMing, I was like, listen, I cannot figure out how to DM and learn some new world at the same time. As a player, I have played other TTRPGs, I've gone to other places, I've done things that weren't set there, and I would love to one day DM outside of there, but that's just what I did. So I picked up a book. Holly recommended a module, Call of the Netherdeep. And my plan was, because I had never done this before, I'm just going to use this book and stick to the script, and we're going to move through it. And I'm just going to figure it out. That started out being the case. We got through a lot of the book quickly at first.
Sure.
But then I got my sea legs a little bit, and the players... Okay, so my table was 3 people who had never played before and who had lobbied to play. And so then I was like, okay, I'm filling the other seats with 3 people who have played a lot and have DM'd before.
Right.
So I was a experienced player, first-time DM, running a group of 3 people who had never played and 3 people who had been DMs before. So I did that on purpose, and I think it worked out great in that early on, they were like, you're doing great, and I did my best. And then I realized, particularly the player characters who had been DMs before, they have these backstories they want to do. And
of course.
They're like, I want to go commune with Sehanine, the Moonweaver. And I'm like,
yeah,
yes. And the moon is full. You know, I'm like, okay, we're off the book. Like, let's go. And so we quickly got into some homebrew content. And I got my feet wet and it went pretty well. I had some experiences where I fucked it up. So then I was like I brought the characters through these caverns, and I had this very specific idea of how it was supposed to go, and I overplanned it.
Oh no.
So they were like, I do this, I do that. And then they start getting mad. They think there's some like answer. And I'm like, oh, you could have, I don't know. And so they got pissed at me, and I was like, damn it. So we stuck to the script for a while more, but eventually the characters had backstories that they wanted to explore, and they were mugging for it. They were like, is there any chance my master that I escaped from, my master wizard that wants to kill me, do I see anything about him in this city? And I'm like, not yet, but scribble, scribble, you know.
It's great when they tell you what it is that they like, what kind of direction they want their character story to go in.
Yeah, and so we ended up homebrewing, and we've been playing for like over a year and a half, playing basically every other week, and we are not done with Call of the Netherdeep.
Wow.
I know. We went on these just complex side quests. They came to the table with ideas. I invented some. A character died, and everybody was like still dealing with that. So I created this whole like Dreamweaver character who allowed them to go and commune with their fallen comrade.
That's really sweet. Yeah.
So it was wild. Yeah, we've been going on for ages, and there's a lot of homebrew in there. And now I feel almost like it's hard to just follow exactly what's in the book.
Yeah, so. I've never been able to stay on script with any kind of module. Usually if I'm running a campaign, it's I find it very hard to shepherd the players in that direction. It feels like it takes away a lot of their fun to be like, yeah, I know you want to keep exploring this town, but like, the book says we're going somewhere else now.
Yeah. And there's also such a hard line of like, if the book says characters who do this happens. Yeah. It feels so much easier to be like, yeah, I'm sorry, you're getting fucked up right now. You're gonna maybe die. But if I made it up, it feels more like I did it.
Yes.
to the players as well.
Right. Because these are your friends that you're killing off their beloved characters.
Right. I have like an all queer group, and they're all people that I hang out with outside of D&D. So exactly. They're my friends. They lobbied me to do it.
And so at what point in this campaign did you start introducing guest stars?
So we were at my birthday, not this past one, but the year before. That's how long we've been going. And my friend Miranda was there, who is a fabulous, chaotic Australian voice actress.
Cool.
She's the voice of Skye in Valorant.
Very cool.
Yeah, she's very cool. And she's awesome. And we're all getting rowdy and drinking at my birthday. And my players mentioned that I had been flavoring this entire region, the region of Jigao, as Australian, because I have, certain accents that I can do very easily. And so I was like, all right, everyone from Jigao is Australian. That way, like by default, they're going to spend a lot of time here. I know I can do this.
That's a hard accent.
I know. And I've got friends who are like, I don't like it when Americans try to do an Australian accent, but you really can. It's hard. It's quite hard for Americans.
That is solid. Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, I did Jigao was all, they sound like this. And, sure. And so they heard her speaking, and they were like, Mike's been making everyone in this region Australian. You should come and visit the campaign. So like my players all fucking came up with it.
That's really fun. And so they were the ones to be like, hey, let's bring in this guest star.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, they know Sam as well. So I'm sure that like, I don't know if they had played in other campaigns with it. I know they played with you. and it sounds like you don't use it.
No.
But they've been
No,
around. They've been around Sam, who spoke about doing it. I think any time in Sam's campaign that someone has a friend in town, Sam's just like,
Yeah.
if they want, they can come and guest star. We'll figure something out.
Really? I fully did not realize this when we were interviewing Sam. That's good to know. Yeah, I because the other players in your campaign I've played with, definitely we never had guest stars. For me, and this is going to be the most curmudgeonly situation, I get kind of exhausted with scheduling sessions,
Yeah.
and adding a guest star is like, oh gosh, now we have to schedule someone else. And so, yeah. Plus, we live in Seattle, and the constraints of how many people you can fit in a living room are quite real, because no one has a ton of space, right?
I didn't know that about Seattle. I've never been there.
Yeah, so I live right in Cap Hill, right, and the housing units are just not very big, and no one has like a big dining room table that can fit 10 people around it. So me and the 5 players, that's pretty much the physical capacity of the room. But I think in LA people just have a little more space where you are to have more drop-in players.
I do. It was crowded because Miranda also brought her. She has a podcast, and she brought her host to just observe, because they were being encouraged by their community to try doing one of these D&D for charity type things that sometimes streamers will do, or podcast hosts. They've had a stream as well.
Got it. Very
and
cool.
She was like, yeah, I think I'm going to go for it. They like it. And I was like, Miranda, have you ever played at all? And she was like, no, but, and I was like, why don't you come and try it out with first I was like, why don't you come watch one?
Yeah, it seems incredibly high octane to have your first time ever playing a TTRPG, you're showing up as a guest in someone else's long-running campaign where everyone else already knows each other, they're all familiar with the dynamics, and you're just going to drop in. That seems like a really high-stakes introduction.
Well, even higher stakes is she was going to get on her stream and try to do this without any experience in front of her community. This is how I told you she's chaotic and Australian. I love her to death.
Yeah.
She was like, yeah, I'm going to go for it. And I was like, why don't you come visit? So I got to a point where the characters in my campaign needed to leave from one continent to the other. And I was like, this is perfect. I'm going to create a sea captain who's from Jigao, so she can sound Australian. And I made her have a ship that has an air elemental that is her friend who fuels it and all that kind of thing. And because she had never played before, to prep her, I had her come to my home, and we had a couple of bottles of wine, and I tried to really, we talked a little bit about life, and then we talked about D&D, and I was like, do you want to take a break? And she was like, yeah, I need a break. Because she didn't even know a lot of the basics about the D20 and all that. So we spent about 3 hours shooting the shit. It was friendship and talking. But I also created a character for her. I made her a druid of a Circle of Stars druid, navigation,
very cool,
ship's captain, shape water kind of stuff. And I conspired with her about certain things.
Excellent.
And I didn't reveal everything, but I conspired with her, and I was like, say that this character can't come on the ship and they have to go with the other, whatever. Because I had a friend who was taking a break for a couple of months, and I was like, all right, they're going to get split up, so just do this. I conspired with her, and she came in and she was very I think this is what I do, right? And I seated her between me and experienced DM.
Yeah.
And so she had a ton of fun. She got to play. She wanted certain parameters,
of course.
I was like, all right, you're confident. You're not going to take any silliness. It's your ship. And I was able to surprise the hell out of everyone still and have it be really fun. I ran so the characters had killed a young black dragon and harvested its tail and grafted it onto the dragonborn character's stub of a tail that he had lost in the war. Which was his origin story for switching to Warlock from Barbarian. So it was very fun. And
that is actually extremely fun.
Yeah, it was great. And the artificer did the grafting and everything. And so I flavored it that once they're out to sea, a fucking adult black dragon shows up and is like, I smell my sister and I know exactly what you did to her. And they were not high enough level to fight this dragon.
Right.
I trusted the people who are experienced to know, no.
Yeah.
You're like level 6 or something. Like you're not going to be able to do this. So I ran a chase sequence where everybody could do something on their turn to try to speed up the boat or slow down the dragon. And the druids shone with having shape water and things like that.
Of course.
And some characters who were not creative, they were like, I put my sword in the water and I try to help paddle. And I was like, you are already riding on like a wave that a player magically created. Nothing happens. Like,
yeah, of course.
Your turn. So, and I made it so like you needed 7 successes or 5 failures or 4 failures or something like that to determine what happened. And they crash landed. And at that point, Miranda, the guest, had no idea what was going on. She made the decision about what to do with her boat and the air elemental. They went into a cave where I had some sea hags and secretly an aboleth was taking control of some of the characters. And it was great. She was surprised as fuck. The only sad thing was that we had to end that session and finish the aboleth fight like right at the beginning of the next one. So I just ran her turns for the last couple turns. And she missed one of my characters trying to knock the other out of the aboleth's control.
That's fun. Yeah.
By like biting it as a giant shark that he had been polymorphed into and instantly killing one of the player characters.
Oh no.
I know. And they were kind of like, is there anything I can do? Whatever. And I was like, no. It was like a little sorcerer. And and he was at like 21 hit points and the giant shark like critical and killed him by more than his HP.
Oh no.
I wish Miranda had seen that.
And she went on to do the stream and everything?
No, not yet. No, not yet.
Okay.
I think she just moved back to Australia for a time to be with her family, but yeah, it was really fun for us. The other players there was such pomp and circumstance around it. It was like, I'm on my best behavior. There's a guest.
And you've had other guests since then as well.
Indeed. Yeah. Marquise was a guest as well. And so he did not require that kind of preparation. I gave him instead a very long primer with information of like, so the artificer character is supposed to have been from the continent they were going to. And his backstory was that his inventions had been used immorally by a former general, like leader, dictator character to commit atrocities against the population. And so he tried to destroy all the blueprints and all the, make sure that they, swords into plowshares and all that kind of thing.
Right.
And so when you got back, I made it so that, hey, actually you see something that shouldn't be there. It's a version of something you invented, but it's been changed. It's reverse engineered. It's different.
And that's the intro for this episode.
That was what led into this. And so they learned that there was an artificer character in the west of the continent
Okay.
who had in some way figured out how to, reverse engineer and repurpose some old machinery, and is now like gearing up to do this sort of takeover of the continent.
Wow.
And it tied in
And
with the
so
character's backstory and everything.
that is very cool. I guess how much, and this is deeply tied in with the guest star's backstory here. So what did the prep look like for someone who's a much more experienced player?
I just wrote him a list of long-term goals and short-term goals. I wrote him a little primer on each character and how they would probably interact with them. I wrote logistics around, you have this battle mech. Underneath your lair, you're going to invite them in. Your goal to start is to invite them in, wine and dine them, be nice.
Right.
Depending on what they do, there's secretly a lab underneath. We find out this and that. I told him the secrets of what the players would eventually discover. So there wasn't as much of a surprise for him, but he didn't know what they would do or how it would go. And I gave a lot of if this, then that. If they start a fight with you, your goal is to get back to your battle mech and try to escape the whatever, the lair. And you have these Warforged who will be you can summon 2 of them and I gave him a character sheet, made him higher level than the characters, so he was a pretty formidable foe. And I gave him lair actions. Because I don't think he's ever DM'd, so it was cool. I was able to give him lair actions, legendary actions, let him kind of mess around with those.
That's very fun. Yeah, he's definitely played an artificer before. We had because he was an artificer in the long-running lockdown campaign that I had. 2 of the players from that, Prim and Chris, have actually been on the podcast since then.
Party.
And, yeah. So that's interesting that it sounds like this is a character who was pretty adversarial to the party, and B, he came in with some novel mechanics.
He was also trying to seduce them. I mean, Hayate, the person whose inventions he was repurposing, was like his hero. And it was like, join me and we can rule together and whatever kind of a thing.
I see.
But if you listen to him, he had, even though he was being very friendly and like Marquise played him very like flamboyant and fun, and he had like disco-y outfits and whatever. He was like using all this very fascist rhetoric of like, we need to like expand Marquette. We need to unify Marquette, obviously, under one flag. And, like the characters were meant to see like, okay, he's whining and dining you. I gave him the equivalent of a replicator where he could make them like dishes from home.
Cool.
And the characters were like, we should fucking kill this guy.
Oh, and how did the combat end up going? I guess did the lair and the Warforged and everything come into play?
Oh yeah, it was great. So he basically said, make yourselves at home, and he went off. He was like, it's time for my nap. And they were free to explore. They could go to their room. They obviously snooped around and found an entrance into the lab where the guy had imprisoned this woman who had betrayed our characters before and made her work as his scientist, getting energy out of ruidium, which is part of the story of the module. And so they had to decide, like, do we work with her? She's tried to kill us before. Should we just attack? Do we sneak? So the alarm got sounded. There were ruidium corrupted monstrosities that got released because they fucked around and pressed buttons on the console. There were ruidium methods. The Gunnar Olenskar was his name. He came down and was like, you're going to be staying a while, blah, blah, blah. And their combat was great. It ended up being that they were on a lift and he's trying to get up to the battle mech and that layer is opening up to the sky. It's like going up like through the mountain and everything. And they're trying to bring him down as he's like flying up, and they're flying with him. And it was awesome. And they almost got trucked because
Oh,
He
no.
got to the battle mech, and they had 3
Yeah.
turns left before they could no longer target him, and it would have been the battle mech stat block.
Oh shit. Okay, so you really did get to try mechanics that you wouldn't usually have. Do you feel like is part of the appeal of having a guest star who's played quite a bit before that you could outsource some of the combat, or is it really about the role playing and what they add to the story?
I outsourced all the combat. Marquise got to make all those decisions. He asked me, like, am I allowed to make a lair action right now and that kind of thing, but otherwise, yeah.
Right.
Also, there was a lot of role playing. That's part of why I think it's so fun. Like, it's just stepping back. It's like,
Yeah.
everybody kind of gets up for it. It's really exciting. Somebody from outside gets to see the cool things that you've created together. And it would have just been a lot of role playing of me doing this character, which is like, I do like doing characters, and I do a lot of NPCs. Thank you. Although my players don't like all my characters. They do not like the Australian Porky Pig sort of character that I have in there. You've got to go. If we, they hate that guy. I love playing characters, but it just brings a different excitement to it, because as much as they do appreciate my character work, which they do, it's just different. And it's such a big character. It's a boss. I mean, it was a boss, so it was cool to just have somebody else do it.
So a lot of what you've been describing, it sounds like with these guest stars, you had some very cool combat, or at least very fun rounds of initiative, and fun character moments. And just, these guest stars are able to take some big swings. I guess I'm curious, and you mentioned this a little bit earlier in your experience as a player. I'm interested in, when you were a DM, how did these guest stars kind of drive the long run narrative arc or the story of your campaign?
So one of them was an optional. I could have just said you get on the ship and then you end up in Marquette. And so
right.
I decided to dress that up a little bit. I was like, there's going to be a character. You're going to have a little mini adventure. The cave with the sea hags and the aboleth was totally invented by me. So cool. That ended up driving the campaign, because a player character fucking died.
Yeah.
Which he was not happy about. But I received very positive feedback from the players overall that, like, you can't not do it. You can't be like, just kidding, or else none of the combats have any stakes. I think it really I don't think the guest star necessarily, the guest star did not perpetrate that player on player crime.
Right.
It was
right.
Holly. It was definitely Holly. And just letting my imagination go and saying yes to a fun little side adventure, doing things that tied into the characters' backstories. Okay, you're going to graft this tail on. Well, there's going to be somebody who's mad about that. Like, this dragon has a family. So that's driven the campaign a lot.
But the dragon, correct me if I'm wrong, that dragon situation wasn't due to a guest star appearance.
No, but I decided when I was like, okay, I want to dress up the travel to the other continent. I was like, okay, let's do a guest star, and what's going to happen while they're going. And it gave me the chance to infuse, without fucking with what's in the book too much. Because I learned that when you try to add a lot of character backstory stuff that you think is like, yeah, cool, I just got my character something really good in here, but it's in the middle of a page of the book.
Yeah.
Then you're like, and the reason that they didn't just kill you before is, you get kind of caught with.
Right, that DM sweat kicks in.
Right. And so the guest star was just, it really added a lot of fun. The chase sequence was unique. I think it was really memorable. And obviously, doing that just opened us up to the possibility of some wild shit, including a character dying.
Yeah.
And we've been dealing with that. We all went on this like spirit quest to say goodbye to him, and he's helping them from, you know, where he is in the underworld and everything. It's cool.
Yeah, I mean, it does really create this very special episode vibe, right? To take that guest star analogy literally. This is it does make a session of the game feel more special and maybe more appropriate for a PC death or some big dramatic thing like that to happen. I mean, and that seems awesome, but how does that affect once the very special episode is over? Once they've reached that climax, do you find that there's a hangover? What do you find like the momentum and tone is like after they've had one of these sessions?
I think that it usually is pretty good because it's typically a bridge to getting back on book. Like we've just been doing a bunch of off script stuff. We've just been doing a bunch of side quests that I made for you. Your character wants this. You know, they're asking me for everything. They're very direct, which I love. I'm like, all right, you're in the city. They're like, is there a hat shop? Like, where's the where's the haberdasher?
And
I'm
like, do you put a hat shop in?
Yeah, and I made them all.
Of course you do.
I made them all like if they did certain things, they could get these hats, and they've got little stupid powers. Like, you know, one of them will float 1 foot off the ground.
With the hat will or the player character?
The hat.
Oh, okay. Less useful. I mean that's really fun though. And so in this context, these guest stars are almost bookending those side quests. Like they're signaling to the players, "Hey, we've done our side quests. We're going to move back into the main campaign."
Exactly.
And to give a little finale to your excursion, you're getting the guest DM.
Exactly. So Marquise came. My advice for anyone who's doing this is
yes.
It's almost definitely going to run over. Like, it's really hard to plan. It's in the same way that one shots never, ever stay as like totally one shot. You kind of have to like maybe finish. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure people do it, but I've always struggled with one shots.
Hey, my median one shot takes 4 sessions to complete. So I'm very sympathetic to that.
Right. So we did the Marquise storyline. We did the evil artificer who's like rich and whining and dining you, but he's also a fascist. And he has the brain stem of the general that our artificer used to work under, living in the basement and blah, blah, blah. We did that, and we only got to the basement by the time we finished the first session.
Right.
So that's going to happen. I mean, if you speak to a guest about appearing, if it's someone who's in from out of town, really make sure that they're like, it's a totally ancillary character. It's someone who is fun. It doesn't matter if they're there again next time.
Yeah, this is something I was wanting to get to because it does seem like having a guest star does impose a certain pace on the session. Mm-hmm. And in a way that like, guest stars in actual plays and things like that don't experience this, but someone has come over and they're unfamiliar. You do have to work them in pretty quickly, mm-hmm. which I love the fact that you end one session saying guest star is going to be here at the beginning of the next one, because I think that works them in really quickly, effectively. But B, you have to get their action out of the way in a finite number of sessions, unless they're just joining the party forever, I guess.
I knew Marquise was down to come again, so that worked out really well. He was not in from out of town. You should be prepared that if you're trying to have them play someone who is like plot centric, you don't know how, and there's this logistical thing where the players are excited by the guest and they all want to have a little scene with him. And they might do more role play than they do normally.
Of course. And so you have 6 guests and everyone wants maybe 10 or 15 minutes of the spotlight. And, right.
So it takes a while. It can take more than ours took. I was impressed that we did that one in 2.
How long are your sessions?
So a lot of times they're on weeknights on Tuesdays. So They are typically 7:15 to like 10:30 or 10:45.
Wow, that is so quick to get through a whole arc like that.
Well, that's why we didn't.
Yeah, I know that's valid. I mean, I guess it also helps to have someone else running half of combat, because I feel like sometimes in initiative, when you are DMing combat and also being all the people in the combat, that can slow things down a little bit.
Totally. And I will say, I think you asked this before, like, no, I think you were asking how they drive the story. But in terms of how they drive the session, I am a high school teacher. So I am very like, is everyone with me? Okay. Hey, Luis. Great. You know, I'm not like a dick to my players, but I'll be like, I'll kind of give a look like, oh, it seems like we're maybe not ready for the next thing. Let's get there. Like, kind of like I mean, it's funny. Like when I teach all day and then I come in DM, I'm like, why do I feel? I feel like I'm teaching more. But I am very. I'm not controlling in terms of not letting them play, but I'm like, I'm not going to have the guest have DM duties. Like they have a character sheet. They have been given certain goals. They've been given certain parameters. They can play, but then I come in with the narration and I'm like, and so then, you know.
Right. Although it did sound like, at least in some cases, they were pointing the party in what direction to go next, or swaying them in that way.
Yes. And I learned that. So I've had characters come in when I was like, they need someone to kind of guide them. So I had Brenna, the Kate Blanchett, Vivian Lee kind of character, show up at one point to be like, I'll take you through the caverns or whatever. And they weren't like really thrilled by that. They were like, okay, fine. Yeah. But I was like, okay, how can I sometimes guide, but also make it fun? I don't want to make it go a certain way. But the guest being a little bit of an appendage of the DM is it's fun.
I love that idea. Like, they're basically your little sock puppet, or I guess this is D&D, so they're like your Oblex pseudopod or whatever. And it really is like, because let's be honest, you have a direction you want them to go. And if you say it, it's like, oh, mean DM is railroading us back onto book. If your beloved sock puppet, this larger-than-life character that you've written several pages of guidance for, says it, it's like, hey, that's just our other friend, unrelated to the DM.
Right, yeah. And I'm not a control freak about my DMing the way that I am about teaching, but I know I have an incredible internal sense of pacing because of teaching. The thing that I could not do about, or the one thing that I could do about playing a sport is NFL quarterbacks have to know I have 3 seconds before somebody's coming around the end of that line and they're going to take my head off, like that internal clock. I'm like, people are going to get bored in 90 seconds if we don't move on from this fucking interaction. So I'm just like, I know I have that internal clock.
Right. And that internal clock probably runs a lot longer with a guest than it does if you're all the NPCs.
Yes. And the players are just more willing to role play. I have a table that I would say is role play medium. There are player characters who really like doing it. There are some who have to coax it out of them a little bit. There are some who, like, sometimes you're setting them up for something and I'm like, you don't want to do this thing that remember you wanted to do, or do you want to maybe talk to, right? So the guest is definitely, it ups the amount of role play because it's not as fun when I'm, like, I think it is a strength of mine as a DM to be everybody's scene partner. Like, I can definitely go back and forth with you. It works especially well for, like, low stakes NPCs that we're having fun with. And we can go back and forth. But, it just doesn't have the same level of zazz when I'm doing it.
That makes a lot of sense, yeah. And have your players, I guess, in your current campaign, we've talked about 2 instances of guest stars.
Mm-hmm.
Is it still feeling special and novel to your players? Are they kind of coming to expect that, oh, we're wrapping up this arc, Mike's going to bring in someone else?
Well, we've only done 3 total sessions that had the guests. So no, it's still novel. I think I could do it again very soon and it would still be very cool. They're in this module, there's like a team of rivals. So they're like not they're generically antagonistic, but they're not evil. And depending on how you interact with them, it's like a Pokemon rival, right?
Yeah.
And so I have to play fucking all of them. And give them all like personalities and voices. And one of them is like, I wrote personality, gay, German, accent, gay, German,
Yeah, that sounds like a whole personality to me. Why not?
So I'm like, I'm going back and forth. I mean, I could do it. I used to improvise where my, a scene partner and I would each play multiple characters in a crowded scene.
Right.
So I can do it. Yeah, I think I could do it again very soon. And recently I've had, Sam has been on pause from the campaign because they have work on a Tuesday. But they're like working to phase out the job that includes that. So pretty soon Sam's going to show up again. And I think that'll feel special. Anyone who's listening, spoilers, I guess. I mean, everyone knows that Sam will show up again.
Yeah, I'm like, I feel like I don't necessarily need to. First off, we're moving towards a policy of not tagging episodes for spoilers for the players in that campaign.
Yeah.
But also, I feel like they know Sam is coming back.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't invited anyone to fill that 6th spot because I was like, Sam always has a seat. Sam's been my best friend for 20 years.
Wow. We're old, eh?
I know. I just turned 36.
Ancient beyond belief. I'm also 36.
Actually, I guess I've known Sam even longer. We met when I was 14.
Wow. Yeah. No, that makes a lot. I think that makes a lot of sense. It is still a novel aspect of the campaign.
Yeah, I think I could do it again very soon, and would love to do it again very soon. And I wanna wrap up this module, and then I've set up some different end of game optional side quests that they kind of know about, and let everyone do that, and then ask everyone hey, do we want to do another one? Do we want me to DM? There's another player I have actually my campaign runs so well because Sam said this, and I'm going to reiterate. It's great to have a rules lawyer at the table. Somebody who's like, are you sure that thing can shove me because I'm size this? And I'm like, thank you. Yes, I appreciate that. But it's it's not always it's contradicting me. It's often really helping me. And so I think Russ could be a great DM for a campaign, maybe keep the same group kind of thing. But I'll DM again in the future, maybe outside of Wild Amount.
And would you put more structure? Because it sounds like right now, because the guest stars are showing up when there's an off book arc. In the future, would you want to have more structure on it? I guess if you're doing this all again from the get-go, how would you change the way you've implemented the guest stars so far?
I think I would have included one in the session where I fucked up and had too specific of an idea of how it was supposed to go. And I tried to be my own guest star and bring in this character who was like, you must go this way. I am the one who knows, right? I literally the character who I know, she's good at just moving people somewhere.
Right.
I would have somebody
she's pretty much all aboard the train. The DM is about to railroad you.
Yeah, and I still think they made certain decisions that made it justified that they got stabbed by all those undead.
But of course, it's very much like that. Yeah, I feel like you can always justify as a DM. It's did I make a mistake? No, it's the players who are wrong.
But I want them to have fun more than anything. So, yeah, so I would probably insert one there. Otherwise, I think it's been good. I think it's stayed special. In the future, I probably would not run a module. It's funny because I went from I have to stick to this book. I'm so afraid. I don't think I can DM at all, let alone, make up my own. But Sam's been making up their own, and it's gone really well. And it's been really fun. So I probably would try to make up my own module kind of situation in the future. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And I guess if other people want to try something similar with guest stars at home, what advice do you have for them? When do you incorporate them? Who do you pick? How should our audience think about this whole concept of guest stars?
So the times that I've done it myself as the DM, functionally it was NPC who has a practical thing to give or bring the party somewhere, and who would be exciting to do something more with. So the stakes were like lower. And then in the other one, I was like, the other thing where I think it's a good situation is when the character's been built up to be such a big, important thing. It's like, this is a character who he's reviving the machines that perpetrated these atrocities, and he's taking over the west of the continent. He ties in multiple people's backstories. If you get all that going and you're homebrewing that, and it's like a boss, then them getting there and you just being like, "Hi guys, it's me," whatever. And I just put on like a little voice. It works, it's theater of the mind and whatever. But that to me was like, this is perfect. So those are two great situations. I think it also helps when they don't need to know that much lore.
I mean, okay, I completely agree with that. The last 2 points you've made, or like the 2 suggestions you made, possibly a big boss and doesn't need to know lore, do seem like their intention.
They are a little bit. I was like, here's what you need to know about how you connect to the character's backstory, and here's like the history of the continent that you need to know about. But everything having to do with the character's main quest, which Call of the Netherdeep is about freeing, and the characters know this, so it's not a spoiler. They've received this vision from a demigod who helped support the gods during the calamity, and he's now in a prison of his own anguish and is kind of corrupting the world, and you have to find him and you have to save him. It's tied in. I was like, all right, there's this thing called ruidium, and you found a way to use it to power your evil machines. But he didn't need to know everything about what had happened to the characters or where they were going or what they wanted when it came to the Apotheon. It was more like, here's how you relate to just like this spot on the land in this place and these characters and their backstories.
And it helps that in this case, the guest star had a really strong agenda for that character as well.
Yeah, I was like, long term, you want these things. Like, you want them to join you. You want to appeal to this character because you admire him. Yeah, like, I gave him all that. And I'm sure there are other situations that people could think of. I'm not an expert in doing this at all. I've just done it a good amount, and I've been I've been the guest star, and I've been in campaigns that had them. So those are just those are my experiences with it so far. I can't tell you everything about it, but the function of it can be really practical, and it's just, you're right. Very special episode. Britney Spears is guest starring on How I Met Your Mother, and she hasn't been seen since she cut all of her hair off. Like, this is exciting.
Wait, did that actually happen?
Yeah. Or it was around the same time. It was part of her comeback, arc.
Oh my gosh. Well, I will definitely tag this episode for spoilers for How I Met Your Mother. In addition to How I Met Your Mother, are there any other media, any books, TV shows, anything like that have inspired how you run this campaign, set the tone, introduce the guest stars?
Yes, as you've heard from me, in our speaking, and I tried to even put an example of it in the opening example I gave you. I am super nerdy. I've done things like playing Magic the Gathering and video games. I'm a big RPG video game player, which is another reason I think that this whole thing kind of came together for me in terms of an interest. So I will do a combination of I like to I'll play characters, but when I want to like move, I'll tell players like this is just like when, you know, Bilbo disappears on his birthday and blah blah blah. Like I'll reference something as a way of I know that most of my characters know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I say what it is, and I like to reference things in the narration, but not as much like in the game. Like
Right.
I don't do a lot of like if I played a bard, I would not actually be quoting modern song lyrics, but I might say he continues to do a song that is very much like when Stevie Nicks went solo or something. Like I would say that in the narration. So I do that. I'm very Tolkien heavy. I'm very I like a lot of Star Wars stuff, so I'll reference things that I think my players like probably know. Like my friend Doug, who plays in my campaign, he plays Magic a lot, so I was like, oh, you're gonna know what I'm talking about. Final Fantasy games a lot, like basically everything from like 7 onward are my favorites. I'm old enough to have played the older ones, but I've only played them like once. But the later ones, when I'm describing combat, when I'm describing monsters. I'm a big Souls player. I love all the Dark Souls games, so I've stolen bosses from them. And I don't think any of my players play Souls games, so they're like, "What do you mean this?" You know, they don't know what
That's so crucial to have some sources that your players don't know about.
Uh-huh.
I need to keep some of mine secret because I worry that my players will find out. But yeah, like I have a novel series which I go to for a lot of the way that magic heavy fights work. And I dread the day that one of the players is like, "Oh, hey, I've read a book that has this exact mechanic in it," because then they'll learn that I'm just ripping this off. But yeah,
that I love having stuff that they don't, the stuff that's in the pocket, or stuff that I know like one of them knows what it is. And so someone's getting. Oh my God! I almost just used some very like inappropriate analogies. Someone's
it's
getting
cool. This podcast.
someone's getting serviced
it's
in one way.
Sure,
someone's getting serviced in like, oh, that's cool. That's a reference to like this thing that I know. And other people are being serviced in another way, which is like, here's a cool monster that I know is good, and
Yeah, everyone wins. So are there any, I guess, tools or resources that you found helpful in running a campaign with this kind of multiple moving parts?
Yeah, I am a little late to when I started DMing is when I started looking into more content. So I still have never really, I've seen a lot of clips of the famous, podcasted and YouTube series that people do in Critical Role and all that kind of thing. But I'm a little late to learning about all this, a lot of this stuff. So I listened to the Dungeon Cast a bunch. I went into their old episodes, all the monster episodes, because I'm like,
cool.
Here's the lore behind this monster. Here's how to use it. Because man, when I'm homebrewing something, or they go off book in the session, and I wasn't expecting it, and I'm like, all right, man, a manticore. There's going to be a manticore. Because I just kind of like remember that and how I can work with it. So that helps me feel prepared with monsters and items. I've stolen a lot of when they do like background on legendary items. I'll usually nerf them, but I like giving out items. Players love it. And I'm homebrewing a lot of the fights or adding to them anyway. So I'm like, sure, I'll just rebalance it around that.
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
So that's been very helpful. I talked to Sam. I talked to Ryan, my GM, DM, parent and grandparent. I get on the phone. I'm walking the dog. I'm like, all right. I'm trying to do this.
Yeah.
What do you think? How do I do it?
No, I mean, absolutely. Shout out to Sam, who came on the show, and we asked them a lot about the physical sets they build.
Mm-hmm.
And halfway through the interview, realized that maybe this is not a great medium for talking about visuals. But I mean, I was psyched to get the chance to talk to Sam about DMing, but boy, it's tough to describe these elaborate 3-dimensional sculpted sets on a podcast.
Though it deserves a shout out. Even though Sam didn't mention me once in the episode, it's fine.
That's true. The betrayal. Yeah.
Recently we did something that had some portals, and Sam had pre-made these. There are these little magnetic balls that stick together, and you can make like any shape from them. But now they're illegal in the US because children eat them, and then
oh no,
magnets will tear you apart.
Yeah.
And Sam made all these portals of it, and it was extremely fun.
That is so cool. Mike, thank you so much for coming on Campaign Spotlight.
Jake, thank you for having me. This was a real fun time.
And that's all for this week.
I'm Dungeon Inspector Jake.
And I'm Production Master Riley.
If you enjoyed the show, consider subscribing and leaving a review, which helps other people find Campaign Spotlight.
If you'd like to support our work, consider going to patreon.com/campaignspotlight and becoming a patron.
And if you want to figure out which one is your real co-host and which one is a doppelganger, quick, ask me something only the real Jake would know.
For more on the show, including links to all our social media, visit folderfrequencies.com/campaignspotlight.